Everyone, this is Nikachu, Merfolk Master, and today is Masters Monday, and on this channel I do interviews with masters of their archetype. If you want to check out the insights to their deck, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And now today's special guest, they are a master of Neoform, going 5-0 continuously on Magic the Gathering Online, the leader, the authority, going super deep in at GP Las Vegas. I'd like to introduce Jonathan Zhang. Thank you very much for coming onto the channel, Jonathan.
Great to be here, Nikachu. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming on. You're also a content creator, a podcaster, an article writer. Where can people find your stuff?
Yeah, I generally post a lot of nonsense, mostly with regards to Grizzlebrand nonsense like Neoform on Twitter at Finalnub. I'm also a co-host of the First Strike podcast, as well as a writer for Face-to-Face Games.
All right, so for all your Neoform needs, you can find that all in the description below. So we need to get some insight on Neoform, because this is like a taboo archetype right now in Modern. Like, it's clearly, like, the most busted thing that you can possibly do, but I don't think there's, like, enough buzz, enough information out there on this, and I understand you're the one trying to take this to the forefront. I mean, Sam Black just recently said, if there are any cards you think that should be banned, prove it. I think you're the one who's trying to prove it. So, why Neoform? Why did you pick up this deck?
Yeah, as I've started, I started Magic like 3 years ago, and I feel like I've always wanted to do something busted. You know, this is my hobby. I have a full-time job, and you know, if I want to play Magic, I don't want to play fair. I don't want to interact and grind out my 1.25 for one card advantages. And I've played things like Cheerios, Grizzlebrand, so like my history is pretty ripe with unfair stuff like that. And as I became a more competitive player, I learned the value of being in the extreme, doing something so exceptionally well, or being the best at something. Tron is the best at being having inevitability, for example, right? And in fact, on Storm used to be the fastest, or you know, Jund used to have the most interaction and all that. And when the metagame becomes ripe for the extreme of an archetype and end of one spectrum, then that deck can break out for a weekend and whatnot. And Neoform, I believe, is the fastest of all decks. And if there's very little interaction, it dodges a lot of the traditional form interaction. For example, Infect is pretty weak to Lightning Bolt and Fatal Push. Like, Neoform doesn't care about that. Storm is pretty fast, but it dies to Graveyard Hate sometimes. Well, we don't care about Rest in Peace or Leyline of the Void. So my thesis is Neoform is by far the fastest kill deck in Modern. If there's not a lot of interaction, a specific interaction, which we can get into later, then Neoform could be the best deck in a given weekend. And hot take, at GP Vegas, before the tournament before Hogak got banned, I believe I had the best 75 in the room, and I had the best shot at winning the Grand Prix.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Modern has never seen a tier 1. I don't think Modern has ever had a turn 1 deck at all. This is the first of its kind. I mean, it's basically legacy, almost legacy vintage power, really.
Exactly, and you know, people famously, or was it Aaron Forsyth, famously said that turn 4 combination kills are good, okay, but turn 3 is not. Making some jokes as to, you know, it's like Modern is a turn 4 format, which I believe has not been the case for a while until recently, in my opinion. And Neoform egregiously breaks that rule, right?
Right. So I mean, like, how often do you win on turn 1? How many super non-games are there?
Yeah, so I actually keep a lot of meticulous record of my my matches, and so I can actually give you a numerical answer to this. So over maybe like 800 matches sample size, my turn 1 kill is around 12%, and turn 2 is like an additional like 20%. So put another way, the game is over by my turn 2, a third of the game. Not acceptable.
Right, yeah. 33% of the time. That's incredibly high. So, So overall, like, how does this convert to win percentage? Like, so what is your overall win percentage
So,
online?
overall win percentage, I would say like I win two-thirds of my matches. My win rate has like fluctuated from like 60 to 66%. Believe it or not, my win rate was probably the highest during um, Hogak summer. I advocated on
Hmm.
Twitter that during the Hogak era, Neoform was the best deck, period. Its nemesis, Blue White Control and Grixis Shadows, weren't around because like Hogak dictated the terms of engagement, and people were combating Hogak with a slower, less interactive things such as Mono Red Phoenix, Burn, and Urza, and or Tron with like Graveyard Hate or Eldrazi Tron, and Neoform would just crush all of those. My record against Hogak in like 40, 50 matches were like 80 something percent win rate. So and like my win rate against like Burn and Mono Red and anything that people brought up to combat Hogak specifically in this very hyper linear, hyper fast format was like around 70%. So that was probably the peak of my win rate on Magic Online and in paper.
So it looks like if anyone wanted to compete on speed, you showed them their place. The Neoform was going to beat everyone on speed, hands down.
Exactly.
And so you said like your nemesis was things like Grixis Shadow and Blue Eye Control. What is it about these decks that are like preventing Neoform from taking over the format?
Right. So the part of the appeal, as I mentioned, was that traditional angles of interaction don't work. Like even Path to Exile, theoretically, which is theoretically good against the Griselbrand turn combo turn, isn't the best. If I
Hmm.
expect Path to Exile, I would bring in a Pact Negation, for example. Fatal Push, Lightning Bolt, they don't matter. Round Six, which took over, or Plague Engineer, which took Modern for a bit, they don't matter. Graveyard Hate, except for
Hmm.
Grafdigger's Cage, don't matter. So what matters is preventing me from comboing and resolving Eldritch Evolution or Neoform on turn 1 or 2. That's Force Negation, that's Spell Snare, that's Spell Pierce, which have become more and more common. The worst
Hmm.
environment that for Neoform was maybe like a month ago when Stoneforge Mystic was becoming more and more popular and people started main decking Spell Snare. So for that reason, having Force Negation, Dovin's Veto, Permission, Narset, like those were all like very hard cards for Neoform to beat. Grixis Shadow has a variety of angles that Neoform struggles to compete against. Like, if it's like 1 or 2 angles, like Burn is very fast but doesn't have interaction. Right, Jund has
Hmm.
interaction in terms of like Assassin's Trophy and discard, but it doesn't have the clock. Shadows has discard,
Right.
Shadows has permission. Shadows has a fast clock. So it's very hard for us to appropriately combat all three of them. So that's why, like, basically Delver type decks and full control decks of Force Negation are the worst types of decks for Neoform to play against.
So, do you think that's the reason the pros are not picking up this deck? That it's got some inherent weaknesses against very popular archetypes, and we look at Grixis Shadow and Blue Eye Control. There's or even like Blue White Stoneblade. You know, these archetypes are all still around, and 66%. It's a great win rate, but you know when you're playing. I think a lot of these pros they're looking for 70, 80% of a win rate if they've got the deck of the the deck of the era.
Well, a few things there. I think like the Magic Online metagame is very tough these days. The margin for error is very thin. The edges are thin. So having like a truly busted deck that has like 70% plus win rate, I think it's going to be more of a rarity than not. That being said, I think the
Hmm.
main reason why pros or even like competent spike players don't want to touch this deck is because it doesn't play out like normal Magic game, all your wins and
Hmm.
losses. Two, your results are very polar in that when you execute your game plan, you are going to be feeling like you're on the top of the world. When you lose, you feel hopeless, right? And number three, I think people are like kind of predisposed into thinking that this type of all index can never be competitive. Like we have like in Legacy, we have like very hyper fast decks like Lipsol, Spells, Belcher, etc. And there were never like
Hmm.
real considerations for to take into a comp REL event because there's like, oh, there's force of will. How can you ever beat that kind of thing? Well, modern the context is different, right? There's no force negation, force of will. There's only few like force negation decks because modern is a very wide, wide open format. And if your baseline plan is good enough against like 80% of the format, and you have a plan against like the 20% who are bad matchups with force negation, then you'll be good. So I think it's like there's a stigma that people think this is too all in. This doesn't have any counterplay, and I just think it's wrong. I'm a spike at heart, and if the deck's not winning, I would
Hmm.
never play it. And clearly, since I've been playing it since the deck's like birth, I still think that it's one of the most competitive decks out there.
Right, right, yeah, and you have the results to prove it. You and who's the other person pioneering this
Matsugan.
deck?
So Matsugan is very a creative degenerate combo player. He is Japanese. He was also the pioneer of
Hmm.
the Hall of the Bandit Lord Devoted Druid deck. And what inspired me
Hmm.
was that he and another Japanese gentleman back to back top aided the online PTQ in June or July. One of the Matsugan even finished second, and he almost beat Blue White Control, and he was one game away from winning the PTQ. And you know what? If what would history look like if Matsugan had won that PTQ in Neoform? People would be, like buzzing right now.
Oof.
But
Allosaurus Rider would skyrocket to the
exactly, and
roof.
as history would have it, because he didn't win the actual thing, then people don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, cards spike and die on
Yeah.
results. So like, but you also had your own really good deep run at GP Vegas recently. Tell us all about it. I saw you on camera. I was rooting for you because I'm rooting for this deck to eventually get banned. I'm like, oh yeah, there's finally someone out there that's gonna do it. This is gonna prove this deck is ridiculously busted.
Yeah. So like to clear the air, I'm also in the corner of Allosaurus Rider is not acceptable in modern. But people like some of
Hmm.
the pros are like, okay, well, it's never putting any results. Like, why does it matter? So I've kind of took it as like a personal challenge to get it banned, just try to proliferate this deck. But yeah, in Vegas, like I made a very succinct post on Twitter about why I think legitimately thinks that Neoform is the best positioned deck right now, and I backed it up. I posted my full 75. I started 11-1, and I was saying like, throughout the tournament, I hope I get to farm Burn. I hope I get to farm Hogak. As long as you give those guys to me all day, I'm gonna make top eight. Of course, my two camera matches were against Hogak and Burn, and I lost both of them. When in my testing, I've had
Oof.
like 70-80% win rates against both of them. So, c'est la vie, right? Be careful what you asked for. So
Right.
I went from 11-1 to 11-4, unfortunately. In the top table, though, there was another person, Chuck Pierce, who was also like 11-1. We actually played in the 11-1 bracket as a mirror match, Neoform, in this economy, right? He came up to me and said, "Hey, Finalnub, I saw your articles. Me and like four other like friends that are playing Neoform, we're all like doing very well." And if you looked at the Toby Henke Channel Fireball article as like a post-mortem for GP
Hmm.
Vegas, Neoform as a single archetype had the highest win rate out of all decks. So we did very well that weekend, and we were a bounce away from actually making the top eight and winning.
Yeah, I believe it, and I believe that this deck is incredibly incredibly strong. So this was how much paper magic do you play?
Very little here. My work life is very busy, but I do like to travel for tournaments. But I don't think there's been many modern tournaments that are available to me. I try to go to GPs close to me, so not a whole lot. But I do grind Magic Online a lot.
So I'm just curious to know, what are your opponent's reaction to, facing off? There's probably so many people at GP Vegas. They play tested the crap out of their deck. They were so prepared. They were so pumped to go to this tournament. It was gonna be their. It was gonna be their event, and then all of a sudden they didn't even get to play a single land drop, and they already lost a game. So to tell us about these games that you had against these opponents.
I will say right now, if you wanna make friends in real life, I would not bring this to your FNM or your GP. This is strictly for if you only want to win, because there's going to be a lot of people with indifferent, salty like looks when you're comboing. Like like I try to build up a lot of goodwill before the game with pregame banter, but that smile disappears
Mm-hmm.
real fast once you're. Uh, Excuse me. Before you take your first turn, reveal Chancellor of the Tango, and they're like, oh, their smile disappears real quick.
Oh, this is how it's gonna
Yeah,
go.
exactly. So I want to say I'm joking, but there's a lot of these, and if you really care about how your opponents interact with you, like a lot of them are good sports about it, but a lot of them are salty, and like I don't blame them because they came in a modern tournament with some expectation about having being able to interact and playing this like cat and mouse game. Even if you're an unfair deck, there's people enjoy playing the cat and mouse game of just being interacted against and trying to combo this through that and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And for you to nullify all that in like a casino-like game, it's like, do you have your turn one? Do you have your turn two? If not, you win. If not, you lose. Do you have your turn one Tigger's Cage?
Yeah.
People don't like that, and I don't blame them. I really don't. That's why I think that Neoform is not appropriate for modern, but it's legal. So what are you gonna do?
That's right. I hope you made some of those Hogak players salty. Like they have no business, being salty. They were playing a BS deck
They
themselves.
were.
So
I have one pretty proud screenshot where a Hogak player turn two produces like 19 power, and I turn two just kill him, and that got a lot of Twitter laughter for sure. It's like, yeah, you're doing some busted stuff. Let me show you.
so here's a really good question because especially during the Hogak era, I thought there was some incidental splash damage against Neoform that was keeping it from like going over the top in form of Grafdigger's Cage. So Grafdigger's Cage was one of the main cards to bring in against Hogak, and I just assumed that that was a card that maybe Neoform just accidentally was getting hated on. Everyone is packing Grafdigger's Cage, but because of Hogak, they had to have it, and therefore maybe that was bringing down Neoform. I would like to hear your take on how dangerous Grafdigger's Cage is against this deck.
So let me get it out of the way. Grafdigger's Cage is excellent. It's even more excellent if your deck offers like multiple angles of attack before the Grafdigger's Cage. Like I know, like Merfolk, for example, it's known to have played like things like Chalice or Grafdigger's Cage before. Well, my foremost concern against Merfolk really is permission, deprive, or curse catcher and whatnot. Which can be dealt with blue pact and black pact. But if you throw in a Grafdigger's Cage, like I can't afford to bring in like Nature's Claim against you, realistically, so like or Burn, which doesn't have any other targets for oxidize effects, for example. So Grafdigger's Cage is definitely good because it does come on turn one, and it's very good if I don't expect it. However, in the Hogak metagame, I think it was a perfect confluence of factors that led to Grafdiggers not being around. So let me explain. It was gradually getting apparent, even after the Outer Dementia, the Bridge from Below ban, that Hogak was busted. Mm-hmm. And people started to adopt this no half measure mentality, where even Burn, who's traditionally on like Tormod's Crypt or Rest in Peace, they were sideboarding for Leyline of the Void. Jund was sideboarding for Leyline of the Void, and my thesis was people can't combat Hogak with half-measured things like Relic of Progenitus or Grafdigger's Cage or Nile Spellbomb. They need hammers. So actually, the number of Grafdigger's Cage, I believe, decreased during that time. So that was a very big metagame shift for me, as well as the fact that Hogak really makes counterspells very embarrassing. So those two really did contribute to the metagame shifting in a way where I think that Neoform was the best deck.
Okay, that's very interesting insight that we're getting from the Neoform Master here. So, what do you think? I understand that you think that the deck is the best. What would just put this over the top? What does this deck need? What is it missing? What boogeyman does it have to beat so that it's clearly tier 1 and like all the pros will start gravitating to it like they do it with everything else?
So I think if a pro team is really curious about how successful it is, it can write like a script, especially with the London Mulligan, to see how often it combos, right? So mathematically, that's not the concern. The concern really is how does it get stopped? And really the biggest answer is permission. And can you imagine, like, Neoform came out in World of Spark, right? Force of Negation came out in Modern Horizon, which is right after. Dovin's Veto and Narset came out in War. Can you imagine a world where Neoform exists without those three checks? It would be bananas, but I digress. I think those really are the enemies, but like even then, like me and Matsugan have adjusted. We have Veil Summers. Veil Summer and Once Upon a Time have been great additions since the inception of the deck, which was in War of the Spark. Veil Summer gives you a lot of recourse against discard as well as permission. It can even beat things like Dovin's Veto or Teferi Time Raveler, which would normally negate something like Pact Negation. So, and Once Upon a Time lets you play like down to like 11 or 10 lands and make sure your consistency is at its max. So I think all the tools are mostly there. Preordain or Ponder would obviously be very good. Our like 57th to 60th spot is kind of iffy because because of the consistency tool being Serum Vision, which is kind of embarrassing when I also play Legacy Storm with Preordain, Brainstorm, and Ponder, and it's pretty embarrassing, right? So having a consistency tool that is better than Serum Vision would be good, or another way to combat counter spells, whether it's Veil Summer already does that for us, so that's already been very good. Like another like alternate win condition, like an Oko or Hex Drinker or something more efficient like that, that can beat counter spells and ignore what your opponent's doing. That will be what's missing, I believe. But without being biased and whatnot, objectively, I think like the deck's already very good. I think the deck's already there.
Right. All right. So it's already there. People just have to realize
Yes.
it. It just needs like an open finish. Because for some reason, no one respects the 5-0s online. You know, you can have a million 5-0s. You can even top 8 a million challenges. It means nothing. Oh, once the top 8's like our GP, okay, everyone starts buying into the thing immediately.
Funny how that works, eh?
It is quite funny how that works. So let's talk about a little bit about Once Upon a Time. How obvious was this card going to be jammed into Neoform? I mean, most people just jumped at it. And how much did it improve the deck?
So it did a few things for the archetype, I think. When I saw the spoiler, a few people really did tag me. I think Rally Knight said, okay, I'm issuing a challenge. Here's the card, Once Upon a Time. Someone get Allosaurus Rider banned in the next 12 months. And like a bunch of people tagged me, which was pretty funny. Some people argue that it might not be good enough because it only finds one half, I guess. Like we have the evolution spell and Allosaurus Rider, and we also have it also can't get the Summoner's Pact. So like let's say like it gets like a quarter, like a half of the combo. What people don't realize is that because we're such a low resource, like high card quantity dependent deck, we actually do keep a lot of one-landers and even zero-landers. And there's a lot of like perfect like turn one kill with Chancellor that just needs a mana. So actually what it does is in my opinion, it gets 2/3 of the combo. One, like the three parts of the combo is the evolution spell, Allosaurus Rider, and lands. And my current iteration, the blue-green iteration, only plays like 10 to 11 lands. And that is precisely because there's Once Upon a Time. It's a green card that you can pitch to Allosaurus Rider. It finds your Allosaurus Rider. Right. And the combo turns where you can cast an Allosaurus Rider and not have to pay for a Summoner's Pact, it's much better. You can take more risks. You can more be adventurous with like Summoner's Pact and, just like drawing to as low as you can. So there's a lot of value in just having the card Allosaurus Rider as well. So for me, it was an auto include, and the only question was like, how many do you need to play and how many lands do you need to play? And my answer was, like initially, like it's going to be probably a 2 of, but after testing with it, it increased a lot of consistency. It opened up a lot more turn 1 and turn 2 kills than I would have had otherwise. So yeah, the card is great, and probably 4 is the number in blue-green.
That's very interesting, actually. That's a very interesting point. It actually has a lot of synergy with the deck because you can, after all, just pitch it to Allosaurus Rider. If nothing else.
One other corner case which has come up a lot is, what if you have like one green? What if you have like one land and you need 2 lands and you just need a Simian Spirit Guide for Eldritch Evolution? And I have like had turn ones where I have 1 land, 1 Chancellor, and all I need is the Simian Spirit Guide, and there's some extra outs from the Once Upon a Time. So a lot of applications for sure.
Do you think that card is fair? Once upon a time, is this a
No,
fair
no, no, no.
card?
It's not at all fair, and it's very ubiquitous, right? Like a lot of decks. If you're playing important creatures that you need to look for, and if you need to do it in a timely manner, and if mana efficiency is very important, then yeah, you're going to be playing it. So you're going to be a lot of decks. I think is a good fit for Once Upon a Time, and it's not very fair, in my opinion.
All right, all right. So I'm curious about your grinding habits because, like, how on average, how quickly do your matches go? Like, how fast can you play one league?
So I think the misconception is that the number of turns you take may be low, but until you get into like I think until you've played so much that you have the heuristics like down to pat, it takes a while to
Hmm.
combo properly. And I get a lot of complaints where people are fizzling when they play this deck, and it's like, oh, this deck sucks. I fizzle so many times, because my three
Hmm.
Simian Spirit Guides were the bottom three cards, or I couldn't find Laboratory Maniac. Like, those are very trivial errors to correct, but until you've put in the reps, it might not come naturally to you. Having said that, I mean, you can probably play a league in like under an hour, and because like when you've won and when you've lost is pretty clear, and you rarely play a grindy game, so it's very time efficient if you want to farm Magic Online tickets, that's for sure.
I can understand that the deck can still take a lot of time because I was watching your games in Vegas and they basically took up the entire round time.
Yeah, that Hogak match definitely was a complicated one. It actually involved combat math some, but just like in paper, like there's the physical logistics of drawing seven cards, making sure that you can manage your
Right.
your hand very well. So for people who have watched me play Brand when I was on GP Toronto, or in GP Vegas with Neoform, I divide the piles into life gain cards, mana, card draw, and like anything else. And if you're not conditioned to do that, like you're going to take like an extra like 2-3 minutes per game that you combo, and those might add up. So I will definitely recommend like paper reps if you are, or gold fishing if you are interested in trying this deck out for paper.
So you would probably recommend this deck still as like a pretty good deck to grind tickets online. Like how quickly can someone pick, like basically after they learn your article, how long does it take to get to a certain level of mastery to start
Maybe like
grinding?
a league or two. Like there are some corner cases where like it just you just don't know until, like, for example, like using Summoner's Pack to manage your library size, because Brand draws seven at a
Hmm.
time, right? So using that to manage your library
Right.
size and not accidentally cutting off your own outs, that was not apparent to me until I lost a few times because of it. So maybe like obviously my articles on face-to-face games is aimed to help you not make the mistakes that I made, but sometimes you just need to fall down before you get back up, right? But I think that like
Right.
after like reading my article, maybe watching like I do have one video, I have a second one coming up this week, but after that, like after 1 or 2 leagues, as long as like you know what's important and what matters in the combo turn, which I think explained very well in the primer, I think you're good to go. So I don't think the learning curve is pretty high. Honestly, I think the biggest skill is mulligan decision. And if you're my heuristic is, if you can't do anything busted, or have a good chance to do anything busted in the first few turns, just mulligan. The deck mulligans very well from seven, and the deck mulligans very well from six, because all you need is five cards theoretically to turn one. That's Chancellor, Land, Neoform, Allosaurus Rider, green card. So don't be afraid to mulligan, as an aside.
So is there any unconventional advice you could give people? I'm sure you have it all in your primer, but like you, as a good point you made that the deck should be divisible by seven. because Grizzlebrand needs to like draw by 7, and I've noticed that in my opponents. They're like, they're using Serum Visions or using some, just getting cards out of their deck until it's divisible by 7, then they can just draw the entire thing.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes to mitigating fail cases, and I'll give you a few examples. One, people have said that,
Hmm.
I couldn't win because Laboratory Maniac was at the bottom, like the bottom.
Yeah.
Well, like Eldritch Evolution is different from Neoform because Eldritch Evolution helps you search for CMC that's X plus 2 or below, whereas Neoform is X plus 1 exactly. So you can actually cast an
Hmm.
Allosaurus Rider and Eldritch Evolution it, and you can get a Laboratory Maniac right there. The second tip I think is like
Mm.
always be cognizant of what is your limiting factor. Is it mana? If you don't have two Simian Spirit Guides, it doesn't matter how many Manamorphoses you have. You can never cast them, you cannot dig, for example. What is it, life? How many
Right.
packs do I need to pay? If do I need to win this turn? Like if I need to win this turn, like upkeep Summoner's Pacting to thin the deck and improve your quality of draw when you draw step. Like would if your draw step helps a lot if it's Nourishing Shoal and you need to win this turn, just do it. Like if you can't survive this turn, then you may as well like thin the deck by like two or three cards, right? People say like thinning the deck doesn't matter. In most cases, that's true, but with Neoform, because you're drawing like 7, 14, 21, 28 cards, those like percentage points add up to 1 or 2% eventually. So those do matter a lot. Like these small details are what like a lot of people don't think about when they pick it up. But I think it's very important in really mastering the deck and mitigating those like 1 or 2% equity edge that you bleed out where you would have had won the game otherwise. So those are some unconventional, I guess, not so obvious tips that I would give to new farm players.
All right, now let's talk about bannings. Let's talk about like uh well, first off, do you think this deck deserves to be banned in its current configuration? I don't know what your philosophy on cards to be banned are, but maybe that we'll start with that. Like, is anything worth being banned right
Yes.
now?
So let me be clear. I think Allosaurus Rider should be banned. I think Neoform is actually a pretty cool build around. It's shown up in some like Renegade Rallier, Voice of Resurgence, like dorky green white value decks. It's also shown up in like Devoted Druid
Yep.
decks as well. And I think the card Neoform generally is a healthy card to have. However, my premise is that even if the win rate is not egregious enough, if the play pattern is so bad and against the ethos of the format, you should ban it. And I think second, what is it called? Second Sunrise was banned for similar reasons, right? Like Eggs wasn't like oppressive or dominating, but it led to very unfun play patterns. And as Aaron
Hmm.
Forsyth once famously said, that Modern is a turn four format. For you to be for you to not be able to take a second turn or a first turn, like 1/3 of the games, I don't think it's acceptable at all. I don't think it's very fun for people. And in general, it's like the power level, the raw power level of the combo deck, I think is like too high for modern, in my opinion. And if people did
Hmm.
pick them up en masse, and if 10% of the next GP was competent like Neoform players, that tournament would be very unfun to play, and they would be winning a lot. So like even though it hasn't won anything yet, yeah, I'll do it. And you know what? No one's gonna shed a tear if Allosaurus Rider gets banned. I wouldn't. I think that Allosaurus Rider
That's true.
should not be legal in this format. So I'm saying it. Why shouldn't they ban it?
I have a viewer who's actually within a similar mentality as you. He's gonna milk Neoform for as much as he can. He knows it's gonna get banned eventually, and when it gets banned, then it gets banned. That's it. But like he's gonna enjoy the deck for as much as he
I've
can
had my
because
run. I've had my fun. Exactly.
well, let's just say, for example, let's say they don't want to ban Allosaurus Rider for one reason or
Hmm.
another. Like, is there any other card? Like, what if they banned Grizzlebrand?
Oh,
How much does this deck
I
change?
don't think there's an 8 drop that's reasonable for to evolve into that you can win on the spot. Like Iona has seen play in Legacy and Reanimator. I believe it's an 8 drop, and there's a bunch of other
Hmm.
stuff like Archetype Endurance stuff like that. But they don't do anything modern. They don't win on the spot. And if you're a combo deck that brings a fatty, works hard to get a fatty. It's basically like a 5 for 1, right? Or 4 for 1. That
Right.
fatty can't win the game on the spot, and because they'll storm you out, or they'll infect you out, or they'll just like path exile or supreme verdict your dork, then there's no point. So yes, Grizzlebrand will definitely kill this deck here. I actually know that this sort of deck was tried when Eldritch Evolution was released, which was pretty recent. It was Shadows over Innistrad, I believe. But
Yeah, yeah, I definitely saw this deck at
okay,
that time.
yeah, okay. I don't quite remember it, but I know a few people have mentioned it. Having 4 enablers only is it's just like it's just too little, and like
Yeah, it
yeah,
wasn't enough.
it already has some inconsistency issue as is, and axing either the Neoform or the Eldritch Evolution would kill the deck a lot. So I would venture a guess and say that if any of the key combo pieces got banned or Grizzlebrand, the deck would not survive.
Hmm. But if they ban Grizzlebrand, anyone who, in theory, bought into the deck, I don't really actually think many people have, but in theory, if they bought into the deck, they could continue to play it. Because for the most part, that seems to be Wizards'
Hmm.
philosophy. They don't usually axe the deck completely. They at least let the core still exist in some form, and they'll either weaken it. I mean, they have taken some hard measures, like against Clan Ironworks and Splinter Twin, but in the most part, they'll make sure the core can still survive in some way.
Yeah, that's true. And a deck that turbos out Alistair Strider into like a turn 1, like Iona, or I don't even remember what good 8 drops are. I've done these like Ashen Rider, for example. I mean, these are good, but
Is Elish Norn
I
eight
believe
drop?
Elish
Eight
Norn is
drop?
a 7 drop, unfortunately. So I mean,
Oh,
the idea
I don't know my 7 8
clearly
drops.
not like you've played creature magic, but anyways, I don't like this. The idea is cool, right? It's like okay, well, you cheat a thing into play and you evolve it into something like more mean. Like on Pioneer, I'm trying this deck where I turbo mill and get a turn 2 Tasker and or a Hooting Mandrill and Neoform it into Dragon Lord Atarka. I mean that deck probably
Oh,
not good, but I've been doing some winning. But the idea is cool, and as long as there are good fatties at 8, like I'm pretty sure that like some form of the deck exists. This current iteration where it wins on the spot with Grizzlebrand should not exist, though. And yeah, the Grizzlebrand ban would kill the deck as it is known.
right, right. All right. I don't know. Is there anything else you'd like to let the viewers know about yourself or about the Neoform archetype in general?
Look, like for those people that doesn't like fair magic and that has felt displaced because like Storm and Infect have only been like periodically playable, if you like fast kills, like give Neoform a try. Like it was really cool to see like meet like the group of 3 4 friends who came up to me and said, hey, your articles and your videos are really helpful, and the deck is actually feels good. We bought the cards, and we brought it up to GP Vegas. We had 2 people at 11 and 4 in GP Vegas, including myself and Neoform. And I think it was really cool that despite the low number of players that we had, like we did so well and all that. And I started thinking like the deck was a meme, but the more I tried it, I almost had like 800 matches in reps with the deck, and I continue to play it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a real spike with with Pro Tour aspirations. So the fact that I'm still playing it really tells you something. In addition to me enjoying the play style. So if you like fast kills, if you like spell combo, and if you think your metagame is full of big mana or fair decks like Jund or Valakut or like any slower like combo decks, give it a try. Like it feels good when you have your first turn 1 kill. It won't feel as good when you fizzle your first turn 1 kill, but like the deck taketh and take the deck gives and taketh. So, but yeah, the deck is good. Have a look at my primer and face to face. Like I put a lot of time and effort into it.
Mm-hmm. You check that primer in the description
There you
below.
go. Yeah,
We're gonna get this thing banned for
we need your
everybody's
help.
sake. The only way to get it banned is to prove it's bannable.
Yeah, we
We're gonna
need the
prove
viewers'
it.
help. Like I put a lot of time and effort
Yeah.
and soul into it. 10,000 words. I'm also going to be releasing a video of my mocks playoffs the 8 rounds that I played in the Mox playoffs with Neoform. I hope that that's pretty good. And other than that, yeah, just like find me on Twitter at Finalnub. Like people are always asking me questions about Neoform, and yeah, I would love to help people who are more interested in the deck. Let's get the deck banned. Let's like combine our efforts and just get Alsus Rider banned. Let's go.
Let's go. Let's do it. Let's do it as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Right, thank you very much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your insights onto Neoform, and let us all know in the comments section below how much you appreciate learning about Neoform. Do you want to pick up Neoform? Do you want to be on the bandwagon to get it banned? You let us all know, and also let Jonathan Zhang know. So anyway, this has been Nikachu Merfolk Master with Neoform Master Jonathan Zhang talking about Neoform in Modern.